is the Niner Fanatic podcast. Thank you guys for coming in tonight and joining me yet again for another episode. But first, before we get to anything, we got to hit the music. Once again, what's going on, Niner fam? It is Peter Lucas. This is the Niner Fanatic podcast. Make sure that you give this episode a like and definitely a subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you hit the bell so you get the notifications when I'm going live. But it was a pretty uneventful day today, for the NFL in general. Well, I mean, for the 49ers at least, and the NFL in general. I think the only thing of note really was uh, Juju Smith Schuster and AJ Brown going at it on Twitter. Um, I'm not even gonna really get into that. It was such a nothing burger, of a back and forth. The only thing that's notable is that you know, the Eagles told the 49ers to stop chirping and to stop talking and here they are whining and crying because the Chiefs are happy that they won. So, I mean, it is what it is, but how you guys feeling today? Mariah's already in the chat. Appreciate you coming through, fam. Make sure that you go and check out her podcast, the 49 Faithful E podcast with her and TL. Those guys are family to me. So I appreciate you giving them a subscribe, giving them check out their show. But this show today is going to be about free agency. And I'm not going to go totally into it because these are 30-minute shows. But I do want to bring up that the fact that we have 21 free agents for the 49ers, and which sounds like a ton, but the 49ers have had more before that. I think last year, I can't remember how many. There was so many last year. But what I noticed was, yeah, there's a couple at key positions. There's a couple of openings at key positions, but it doesn't look to me as bad. And some of these guys, they're going to make their way back onto the team. But it doesn't look as bad as it did last year. We weren't quite sure what a lot of the positions were going to end up last year, and it's this year it just seems like um, the guys that are unrestricted free agents are, I mean, a couple of them are guys that the 49er fans have been complaining about for a long time. And another one is, I mean, if we're being honest, he's getting a little long in the tooth. But let's get started with because I looked up Spotrac earlier, and I'm gonna start with the position groups. The most important position on the team is quarterback, right? And the 49ers are still kind of, I mean, we all know the situation with Brock Purdy and Trey Lance. That's going to be a competition. But both of those guys are under contract for the foreseeable future. So that is a good thing. But the two guys that are unrestricted free agents that played for the 49ers this year is Josh Johnson, who last time we saw him, he was getting concussed in the NFC Championship game. And then we have Jimmy Garoppolo, the infamous Jimmy G, porn star, whatever you want to call him, like a thorn in our side, yeah, whatever you want to call him. But the reality is Kyle said it pretty clear at the last press conference. We saw him and Lynch. They said that they don't really see a scenario where Jimmy's going to be back. I don't think either side. I think both sides are ready to are just ready to part ways. the drama and all the extra is it had gotten a bit much. It had gotten a bit much, and there was a whole lot of just, I mean, just nonsense kind of just being thrown around like a bunch of. Jimmy was given credit for a lot of wins that weren't necessarily they had nothing to do with him. And likewise, he was a steady presence. He's a starting level quarterback, but he was a steadying presence. And before this season, I mean, Shanny's he was the one that ran Shanny's offense the best out of the guys that we had had. Let's just be honest. Now, the people that we had were CJ Beathard, uh, Nick Mullins, who else? Who else? Uh, there were so many bad ones. Let's just say that. And to say you're just the best of the worst, I mean that's really what it comes down to. But the reality was is they had to eventually move on from Jimmy because of the injury issues, because of the unrealized potential of this offense and all the weapons on it. They weren't being taken advantage of, and that's just the reality. Like I think even the biggest Jimmy fan is going to admit that he is not a top tier guy. And like yes, you can win with him. You can get wins, but when it comes to the playoffs, when it comes time for the playoffs and you need a throw, it just wasn't going to be enough. They were obviously looking for an upgrade. Here we are. They're either way they go, whether it's Lance or Brock Purdy, I feel like it's an upgrade. So I give it a absolute 0% chance that Jimmy will be back. Like but when we're talking about like there's a few different quarterbacks that are going to be on uh that are going to be on the market. Um and I looked up a few, but we just saw one of them, Derek Carr. uh we just saw one of them, Derek Carr, the other day. The go this Well, I guess today it was official. They made it official. They released him. So, what do you think? And I haven't even looked at the chat yet. But like, what do you guys think about Derek Carr? I asked it on yesterday's show, and the more I think about it, I think the less likely that's gonna happen. And I just don't see a scenario where Kyle brings in a with Trey Lance, with Brock Purdy on the roster. I don't see a scenario where they bring. I think it's you're more than likely going to get a backup level guy. Uh, I really wanted Taylor Heineke. That was who I was really looking at, and I'm but I the more I look at that situation, it seems like he just wants to stay on that team. And I think it might cost a little bit of money to get him out, to get him off of that team. So yeah, I don't think he's going to be an option. So I mean, there's a few different guys that are out there from the quarterback position that are possibilities. So I mean, top of the list, they got Derek Carr at the top of the list, but I mean, you got Baker Mayfield out there, who I think, call me crazy, but I think that the Rams might end up re-signing him. But I don't want Baker Mayfield. Sam Darnold is out there. Sam Darnold is an interesting name because it's a guy that was tied to the 49ers a couple of years ago when when they first started talking about all these different trade scenarios before they drafted Trey Lance. And I don't think that Sam Darnold is a starting level quarterback at this point. At least he hasn't proven himself so. But I think that he's a guy that you could put that could be a backup, a strong backup guy that does have some talent. He does have arm talent. He does have he can move with his legs, and that might be a guy that you bring in. I think that he could be a strong candidate for that. It says that his market value is 5.1 mil. That's his market value. I would do that. I would do that. That's my top guy right now that I'm looking at to bring up as a backup um to Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. Like, I mean, he'd essentially be third string. Like, but yeah, like that's my top. People were talking Teddy Bridgewater. I don't like it. I just don't like it. I don't think that Teddy Bridgewater has shown any talent in my opinion. I just don't. I'm not a fan. You got Case Keenum out there. You got Mason Rudolph. You got Jacoby Brissett. Brissett would be an interesting, but I don't know that he would take third string. And and then you've got the Joe Flacco's and the Andy Daltons and the Mike Whites. Mike White is another interesting one that I might bring in for a third string. But I'm looking at Sam Darnold right now. And that's my main guy. I know that probably a lot of people aren't going to agree with me on that, but we're talking third string. We're not talking about him, and I know that that makes it a possibility that he could start for Shannon, considering Shannon can't keep any quarterbacks healthy. But let's just be real. He's a third. We're talking about the third stringer, and if you can get somebody in for cheap, like that is your third string guy, um, you've got two guys on their rookie deals. It might be worth it to bring in a guy with experience. So that's just the way I'm looking at it. But let's move on. And I gotta say, what's up to Damien? Appreciate you coming through, fam. Um, Damien, and then East Coast Red and Gold podcast. Make sure you check out that podcast. It's a really good group of guys. Good startup for them. And he said, "Hey there, appreciate you coming through, guys. Like that's yeah, definitely check out that podcast. I checked them out the other day. They're pretty good. So but let's move on to I had a whole I want to talk about tight ends because Tyler Croft and Dwelly are both unrestricted free agents. And I think that that backup tight end spot has been a thorn in the 49ers side for years now. I feel like they just don't value that that I mean they do have his name is just completely like I'm blanking on his name, but they do have another guy. But he is Tyler Croft easily came in there and took his job. So he's not that much of a factor. And then you've got and then Ross Dwelly, I mean, he pretty much got his job taken. So both of those guys were only making a mill. I kind of like Tyler Croft. I know that he missed the block on Hassan Reddick. I get it. I like Tyler Croft. He seems to have a talent for getting open. Uh, he's not a bad blocker in the run game either. So I wouldn't mind if they brought Tyler Croft back. Ross Dwelly, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't mind if they brought both of those guys back. But I would like to see them draft a guy and see if we can find a diamond in the rough. I know that there's a Iowa guy out there that I'll be getting into. Another guy from Iowa that I'll be getting into when I start looking into the draft. That might come. We may be able to get him in the later rounds, and that there's a couple of guys that you can probably get in the later rounds. They've got some really big guys this season from the so far from what I've seen, and I'm going to be interested to see how these guys kind of measure out at the combine. And not that is everything for me, but as I deep dive into the film and like that kind of stuff of those guys, I'll be really the 49ers are going to want a guy that can block. And if they can find an upgrade at that position, a guy that they can bring in just as a blocker, I think that might be a guy that could flourish in the system. Remember, Kittle, they had no idea. Kittle was going to be Kittle. They knew he could block. They knew he could block, but they did not know that he was going to be Kittle. And it ended up being a steal. But I think that some of these guys out there it might be the same situation. So But another position, let's talk about our tackles. Daniel Brunskill and Mike McGlinchey. Daniel Brunskill and Mike McGlinchey are both unrestricted free agents. Daniel Brunskill, I think, is going to come back. I think that they bring him back. He is 29 years old, so I mean, he's still young enough to where, yeah, I imagine he got 2 million. He got what 2.4 million this last season. Like, I have no problem bringing him back for that. And I still think that they're going to draft at this position. I think that there's a couple of different routes that they're going to go in this position. I think that everybody's talking about Burford kind of sliding out to that spot and maybe them looking for a guard. I could see that too. You really never know with the 49ers because the more that we think that they need to upgrade, the more they want to stay in house. And I think it's always an interesting. It's really stupid that we always try to predict what Shanny and Lynch are going to do. They always do the exact opposite, and I'm not going to try and figure out this year what they're going to do. I'm just putting some possibilities out there, and then it'll probably none of it, like, none of it'll probably happen. But but these are things that I'd like to see. I'm interested to see what you guys would like to see happen with those a couple of those positions, but yeah, McGlinchey, I think he's gone. I don't understand people talking like there's a chance that he might come back. He is not coming back. Because the more I look into it, they're not gonna pay what is he at? He is his market value is at 10.7 million. I don't think they bring him back for 10 million. He's that is too much to pay for a guy that only really is good on one side, one aspect of the offense. He's a good run blocker, great run blocker. But his pass blocking is it's not good. Sometimes it can be good. Let's say this, he's wildly inconsistent. And when you say inconsistent, it's one thing if a guy gets by you. It's another thing to completely whiff and have a play blown up on your side. When he does when it goes bad, it goes really bad. And that's what you can't have. I can let a guy get beat eventually around the edge. Like, I can see that. But when you're constantly allowing, like, and I won't say I shouldn't say constantly, but when periodically, like, you're letting guys just run right by you or push you out of the way. Oh, and I'm almost knocking down my microphone. Like, how angry I am about this subject. Like, when you're almost letting guys just go right by you, it's not fair to your quarterbacks. We talk about what's one of the best, one of the things that the 49ers have to look into the most this offseason. It's pass protection. And that's what the fans want to see. So you're not going to want McGlinchey to be back. You're definitely not going to want to be paying him almost 11 million a year to not be a good pass blocker. So I think that for these two, we have two pretty solid quarterbacks that need protection, that need they're pretty, even though Purdy looked great, he's still a rookie. He was still a rookie. And we saw that in that NFC championship game. He wasn't ready for his guy to get beat. Didn't identify where Son Reddick was. He couldn't feel the rush. He didn't step up. He didn't run away from the pressure. So, and people were bringing up the fact that Pat Mahomes had the same kind of issue in the Super Bowl. And nothing happened to Pat Mahomes, but he has, not that I'm comparing the two, because you can't compare the two. One's a rookie, a 7th round rookie. The other guy is the best quarterback in the league. So his awareness in the pocket is going to be on a much higher level than Purdy. So, but I think that when you don't have that high of a level when you don't have that Pat Mahomes level of awareness in the pocket, guess what you've got to do as a coach? you've got to be better in pass protection. It's not brain surgery. So the way I look at it is Mike McGlinchey is gone in my mind. I would be shocked if they bring him back. It's a mistake. I'm gonna say it right now. It's a mistake because now you're not you're just basically saying the status quo is okay, and you're trusting that your quarterbacks will in the future just feel the rush and know when McGlinchey is gonna get burnt. So it'll be interesting. It's an interesting thing to look at going forward, but I definitely think that they will be bringing Daniel Brunskill back. Robbie Gold. Robbie Gold is an interesting one also because the so Robbie Gold is how old is Robbie Gold? He is 40. Robbie Gold is now 40. Do you bring him back? I mean, he didn't seem to lose anything this season. I I mean, being 40 years old, kickers can be older. And but how long of a contract do you give him? How long is he asking for? Is the question. They don't even give him a market value. But I would he made last year he made 3,600,000, like so 3.6. I might give him that. 3.6 if we can convince him to come in for 2. Like I if as long as he's not asking for more money, I'm bringing Robbie Gold back if he wants to come back and play. He has a full invite to come back. So yeah, that's how I feel about Robbie Gold. And then I want to look at the defensive line because there's quite a few guys that are you've got Hassan Ridgeway, Maurice Hurst, Kerry Hyder, Samson Ebicom, Jordan Willis, and Amenahu, all free agents. Now, and it makes it sound like that it's the whole defensive line rotation, but really the only important one. Oh, and I forgot to mention Jordan Willis, I think, but maybe I did. But either way, but I would say that because of Chris Kasarik, I would say a majority of these guys are expendable. Like the except for Amenahu. I'd like to see them bring Amenahu back. Samson Ebicom was a disappointment to me. They're paying him $6 million. They were paying him $6 million this past season. They're saying that his market value is at 7.7 now. Like I don't know how his market value could go up when when he only averaged like what 5 sacks out of the 2 seasons. He averaged 5 sacks a season. That's to me, and not that that's all that there has to do with being a defensive end. He actually developed his game and he's actually become pretty decent against the run. But I would say that you can find his production elsewhere and take a chance on somebody else because of Chris Kasarik. And it's going to be I think it's going to be there's a lot of guys out there. There is a ton of defensive linemen out there right now for uh, at that position, and I want to bring up a couple of names. So we've got an interesting name in these, and I'd be shocked if they didn't re-sign him. But Clellan Ferrell, he's a guy that played 16 games. He only had 2 sacks, but so I mean, I guess he would be a disappointment. But I mean, the guy when I watched him play against the 49ers, I thought he was a really good player, and he's a guy that I like, and he's only 25. He's a guy that made 7.8 last season. So with his low sack total, I think that's obviously a guy that can be had for cheaper. And so if you're gonna go with like if you're gonna go with for like maybe some upside, maybe just like another reclamation project, I could totally see Clelin Ferrell. And then also I'm looking at a um I'm looking at a Brandon Graham if we decide to go the what's it called, if he doesn't retire. But if they decide to go the veteran route, I don't think they'll go the veteran route, because they might go the veteran route just because then you would have him and then you'd have Drake Jackson on the who I know they want to take a step forward, but Brandon Graham might be a really good piece to bring in and mentor that kid. They got Bosa already, and I think he would be a great mentor also. But Brandon Graham, I think it would be. I mean, he's a little longer in the tooth, and I think he'd be more open and have the time to mentor him. But I'm also looking at you know, Javon Hargrave is out there. Now, these guys made a pretty penny. Like Brandon Graham made 13 mil. So did Javon Hargrave. But Brandon Graham is almost 35 years old. Javon Hargrave is 30. They're on the downside. They might be willing to come in and take a little bit less money in that $7-8 million range to come back and just be a part of a winning team. Now, the Eagles might bring those guys back like for that very reason. Like so I don't expect them to be going anywhere. I think that they're probably going to end up re-signing. Almost their whole defensive line is a free agent. They're all veterans though, so I don't expect them to bring all those guys back. I think that they'll probably hold on to Hargrave as he's a little bit younger than Fletcher Cox. So you never know. Fletcher Cox might be the one that opens up. Robert Quinn is out there. You got and Robert Quinn had a really down season this season, but you got a few different names out there. You got Ngakwe from the Colts that I would be shocked if they let him go. He made 13 mil this last year. I'd just be shocked if they didn't try to bring him back, unless he just doesn't want to be a part of it. But that's something that we're going to have to look at. But there's just so many. Akeem Hicks is another name from Tampa. 33 years old. He made 8 million last year, but he only had one sack, so he had a down year. They got a lot of guys on here that had down years that are actually pretty decent names. Another, and I'm gonna keep saying it. There's an interesting story around Khalil Mack. I feel like they're saying he may be like a cap casualty and get cut. If that happens, I could see, because he's getting up there in years also, I could see him coming to a playoff ready team, taking a little bit less money and coming to a playoff team, because he's never really played on a team that was really that good. So I think he'd be ready to come and try to win somewhere. I think he thought he was going to have that on the Chargers, but if they cut him, I could totally see some playoff team picking him up for a discount price. And that's a guy that I know that he had a down year this year, and I know that they say he's lost a step, but he's a guy, once again, veteran presence, that I think that could help some of our younger guy like a Drake Jackson and whoever they draft, because I fully expect them to draft another defensive end and maybe a defensive tackle. So um, but for as far as the defensive tackles go, the you've got there's a couple that I mean, you everybody, the flashy name is Deron Payne. But and then you've got Javon Hargrave out there, who I think the Eagles are probably going to try and bring him back. But Dalvin Tomlinson, that's an interesting name. He only had 3 sacks, but he played 13 games. He got 10 million this last year. I think that he'll probably stay with Minnesota, but Shelton Rankins is another one for the Jets, that he had 3 sacks. He was only making 55 or 5.5 this past season. He's about to be 29. That might be another guy that could be had in free agency. I don't know how many free agents the 49ers are going to sign. Because it's just, I mean, the reality is the 49ers like to do a lot of stuff in-house, and for the most part, it's worked for them. But they don't do splashy free agent signings. So I would be shocked if there was a huge signing. But one of these guys that they're getting that they're going to pick up on a that came off of a down year, and it's like a reclamation project. I think people I saw people wanting to bring Hassan Ridgeway back. I don't I'm not a I thought he played well. I thought he played well, but injury issues. I think the 49ers need to move away from guys that with injury that get injured, because you can't keep putting your eggs in the basket with guys with injuries, in my opinion. Like, I think that they're going to have to be a little selfish, and then just, yeah, like, they're going to have to make that decision. But uh then I've got after, the defensive line, you've got Emmanuel Mosley. Emmanuel Mosley is Emmanuel Mosley and Jason Verrett are the two corners. I think, unfortunately for Jason Verrett, I think that's a wrap for him, in my opinion. Like, it's his story is such a sad one, like, because so much talent and he just can't stay healthy. Uh, Maybe he can come back as some kind of coach, or uh, yeah, I hope the best for him, but I just don't think that they bring him back. And then, maybe he just calls it quits. Emmanuel Mosley is going to be I keep saying really interesting, but it's going to be, I'll do my Greeny impression. It's going to be fascinating to watch what happens with Emmanuel Mosley, because he showed us so much the last year and a half, 2 years, how good he could be. and then, but he just he struggles to another guy that struggles to stay healthy. And I don't if he I think it's going to affect his price. Now, the market value, they have him at 16.5 million per year. uh I don't see how he gets that with the injury history. If we could bring him back for 8, or even, I mean, if they're feeling generous, get him in for 9, I could see it. I could see it. Like, just for it would have to be a 1-year prove it deal in my mind, because I mean, the guy has never been able to stay healthy. So, I mean, every year he's played for us, he's been hurt. So I don't know how that works out, but I would prioritize, if you can get him back for cheaper, I would bring him back for sure on a 1-year prove it. I mean, if you're really feeling confident, make it a 2-year deal, but it will not be a long term deal for sure. Um, but the where did he go? There he is. The but yeah, it's gonna be really important. It's going to be really important that the 49ers are frugal with their money, because they're going to have to pay Bosa. That's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. And that they're going to break him off. I know he said he would take some kind of he didn't wasn't in it wasn't important for him to be the highest paid defensive end, or the highest paid defensive player or whatever, but the reality is they're going to break him off. I would like to see them front load his salary, and get a majority of his guaranteed money out of the way early. Like, but I don't care how they structure it. He's going to cost a pretty penny, and I think that that's the reason why it doesn't matter how you shake it, because he's going to cost so much that it is going to limit. I mean, when I say limit, it just keeps them from being able to make the splashy moves. They're still probably going to bring in a couple of guys. They're going to draft guys. Uh, but yeah, it'll be. But the last guy I really want to talk about is Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward is I think the way people are talking about Jimmy Ward is a little unfair to him, uh, and and it's probably why he's good with leaving at this point, because I I can't blame the Niners because Tashawn Gibson was playing so well. He was getting picks, which Jimmy Ward struggled to get in his career. Like, but Jimmy Ward is a leader on this 49er team. He's a leader, and he was one of your main culture setters, like going into the Shanahan regime. He obviously had a really good relationship with Shanny, and it was unfortunate the way this past season ended up for him. And I think it's really going to actually hinder how much he makes on the open market. They're saying that his market value is 7.6 million. This guy was one of the better cover. He's about to be 32. He'll be 32 midseason. But this guy was one of the better cover safeties in the league for 7.6 mil. I would love for them to bring him back if they're not going, and just let him know that he would be that he's going to be a safety, because if you're going to bring Tashawn Gibson back, like, I mean, he's older. Like, and I just look at, I want a leader out there. I think that aspect of what Jimmy brings to you is it can't be measured. Like, Tashawn Gibson played great for us. Like, but I lean towards Jimmy Ward. I just do. I think Jimmy Ward could have given us the same thing Tashawn Gibson gave us if he was given the opportunity, but he wasn't. Remember, this is the first year that they just went crazy with the interceptions. D'Amico ran a little different of a system this season than he ran the year before. I mean, the numbers were almost flip-flop for the defense. So it's, and when we're talking about turnovers. So I would have loved to see Jimmy. And now, granted, the only reason why Tashawn Gibson was able to get that to have that opportunity was because Jimmy got hurt. So I mean, we are talking about injuries, but and Tashawn Gibson stayed healthy the whole season. But I look at bringing Jimmy back, and there's a guy that I'm looking at that I'm going to be interested to look at throughout this process. I want to see what happens to Nazir Adderley, as what I believe his name is. From on the He was on the Chargers. He was mainly a for the most part, he was I guess they, considering where they drafted him, he was a kind of a disappointment. Like, but supremely talented, good measurables, and think about who our defensive coordinator is now. It's Wilkes, who is really good with the secondary and the back half. I think that he could do something with Adderley, and the I think that is an interesting name to bring in, because let me see if I can bring him up, because I wanted to see if they had his market value up. Well, I guess I could just look at it by player. There's 67 safeties, free agent safeties right now. Uh and Nazir Adderley, they do have his market value. He only made 1.1 million last year, but he's so he's due to make 8.7 mil. I think that this is a guy that could solidify the position. He's only 25 years old. And yes, we have Quantrez Knight. Yes, they could go and get somebody in they could get somebody, and they could draft another person. But this is a guy that they could probably get for this amount, and they could solidify the position for the foreseeable future. Hopefully, he would end up doing a little bit better. He was the 21st ranked safety, but I think a lot of it was that scheme that he played with in on the Chargers, and I think that playing with Wilkes might do him some good. But that's just my thought process. I think he has some really good talent and really good athleticism. I think that's a guy that that they might be able to work with. So, but just a name to think about. But with that being said, guys, I am about to get out of here. I'm already 10 minutes over. But tomorrow I will be back tomorrow. We're going to talk again about some different maybe draft prospects that we might be looking for. That the reality is until free agency is over and uh, until the combine happens, we don't really know who is going to go where and what the where the 49ers are going what the 49ers are going even going to be looking for. So but they I'm gonna look at a few key positions, some like that we talked about today, some defensive line prospects, some offensive line prospects, really the trench guys, and if I see somebody else that sticks out, maybe like in the back half, I'll point them out too. But definitely come back tomorrow. Definitely revisit with me. I want to see you guys get active in the chat. And the but the reality the reality is we've got a long off season to go. So hopefully you guys stick with me. And once again, like you can see this on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and anywhere where you can get your audio podcast. But remember to tell a friend so that we can be friends every day now, like multiple every week. So with that being said, we're going to get out of here. But I appreciate you guys coming through, and make sure you hit that like, make sure you hit the subscribe, make sure that you hit the bell for to get the notifications for when I go live. And I will see y'all tomorrow. And as always, go Niners.